So how do you discern between intelligent design and not designed?
The indicators for intelligence. Like there are indicators
What
that
are
indicate. So informational hierarchy integrated systems, like encoded into DNA, like are also just like integrated systems being present in and of themselves, like where one thing would rely on another, and like they couldn't like co-function, kind of like the transcription and translation system. Complex specific information like we see in the DNA code. Just there's a couple other ones I had on my presentation. I can't remember them all right now. Those are like 3 or 4 of them though.
Sure. No, I mean, let's take a few at a time maybe. But so like we were talking about system chemistry earlier, and those are autocatalytic cycles, but it's actually like product A produces products B and C, which then in turn produce B and C, or sorry, B and C produce A, right? Like those do form naturally. Why couldn't it get more and more complex where instead of A changes slightly, and then it creates B, C, and D. B, C, and D then produce A and E, and eventually you get to something as complex as DNA. Like, would that indicate intelligent design? The systems chemistry is also indicate intelligent design?
So with that, particular examples might be better because, like, in the case of proteins and RNA, you're saying like these things happen naturally, but like the protein formation and the RNA formation, like they would require and a lot of different conditions, like different environmental conditions, and this is why whenever you see them like talking about hypothetical ways that RNA and proteins could be formed and replicating them in original life research, they have like different conditions because RNA would not necessarily be stable in the conditions that the proteins are stable in and that the proteins would require to form. The proteins would definitely require some like type of hydrothermal vent, hyperalkaline environments with like high temperatures for those like amino acid bonds to form. And then also, the RNA like would not be able to be like sustainable in those environments unless you found like a really good neutral environment where both of them can form without the requirement of enzymes. But it's the requirement for all this energy having to be put into the system without enzymes, which will lower the activation energy, that makes them so harsh. Like without having enzymes, you'd need like these crazy environmental conditions to make like peptide bond formation for protein. So it's just like the environmental incompatibilities would be what I would like raise an eyebrow to in terms of the systems chemistry solution.
Do you want to talk about abiogenesis? Like, maybe it sounded like you're just trying to clarify your position and not actually talk about abiogenesis. Am I reading that correctly?
No, this is exactly abiogenesis research. What I'm saying is that the conditions for the abiogenesis original life experience, like what would be required to have RNA formation and peptide formation, which would be like some of the most basic molecules for the first life form, would be different. And RNA would not be sustainable in the environment you need to create proteins. So this is like abiogenesis research has basically been creating proteins and RNA. They're just trying to create the basic fundamental, biopolymers.
Yeah, for sure. I agree that the field is like very, very underdeveloped, and we're not to the point where we're confident at all about the particular way that life got started in the first place. Like, I'll concede that for sure. I don't think that's really a point of contention. But I guess what I'm kind of driving at a bit is like, if intelligent design is in something, how do you discern like the properties of that thing are intelligently designed? Because if natural processes, like things that we can label as natural processes, can do very similar things, like forming autocatalytic cycles, then why would I think that like a piece of DNA granted it's a much more complex system working inside of a cell, why it couldn't come about by something kind of similar.
So autocatalytic systems. Okay, so if autocatalytic systems can form, is what you're saying, then why wouldn't we assume that things like, DNA could form? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay, so the autocatalytic systems, like they haven't actually gotten.
Like a amethyst or particular. Sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead.
dude. Yeah, I know what you're going to say about the self-repeating structures like the amethyst and a crystal.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I just want to like they're actually working on trying to get some like self-replicating system without the input of like, templates or any sort of like intelligence. Like but just from like putting in the basic monomers, which would be like amino acids which make up proteins or nucleotides which make up RNA, they're not able to actually get like self-replicating systems. Like so they have done experiments where they put in primers which already have like a template, a code in them, and then like basically like a primer, like an RNA primer, and then found that after XYZ cycles, like I don't even know if it's millions, thousands, or whatever, a bunch of cycles, they found like these same templates actually were there multiple times, and they're like, okay, well, these templates could be self-repeating and like form other codes that are similar. But they're inputting primers in that experiment. And then also, like with the self-replicating RNA, like the RNA, what's it called? RNase. I can't even think of the name right now. But basically, for the self-replicating RNA, the ribozymes, they actually put in an RNA polymerase and kind of tweaked it up a little bit to get it to self-replicate. So they're not forming these autocatalytic systems just from primers at this point, like just from like monomers of nucleotides or amino acids. So, it would be nice if they can get something that was like autocatalytic and self-replicating without inputting like codes or other things that are already living. Like that would be nice, but they just haven't got that far yet. So if that was the case, then I would say, yeah, absolutely. Like maybe, if we can get like self-replicating RNA just from the input of nucleotides, then that would be something that might be more feasible for origin of life, hypotheses. But at this time, we're not getting autocatalytic systems just from basic, organic molecules. But if that was the case, then you could say, yeah, well, once that's enacted, then you can probably have like natural selection take over. There would be some other questions I would have even if that was the case, but still, that would be a huge advancement. But we just haven't got there yet.
Yeah, sure, and I'm definitely willing to grant that for the sake of the discussion. I guess maybe a better question would be, what experiment do you think somebody could devise that would demonstrate intelligent design?
What experiment could they do to demonstrate intelligent design? I mean,
Yeah,
I think a
because I
lot of
mean,
original life. Yeah, go ahead.
well, the reason I ask is like disproving hypothesis A doesn't demonstrate that hypothesis B is correct. You always need your own independent justification for your hypothesis.
Well, look, let me give you an experiment that they could do that would disprove, not necessarily disprove because it'd be hard to, disprove it, but you can like still like have like reasonable ways that we could get life without an intelligent designer. So this would be one of those experiments. Because like the reason I say it is because like you can't like disprove God. You can't like there's some philosophical reasons why, but I know it's like we couldn't just like disprove God scientifically because that wouldn't be something we could really test. But in terms of like disproving the requirement for intelligent design for original life, like definitely like putting in some nucleotides and having them form a sequence, having them form a code, like a DNA code on their own that is like, able to, code for some of these basic functions of life. That would definitely disprove the need for intelligent design, like the requirement for it to create life. So like if it can create its own DNA code from activated nucleotides, which are, able to bond, we assuming that we just put in nucleotides that are already ready and able to bond. If they were to like form some code that could like be like self-sustaining or something, like some code that would like encode something useful for life that could keep it going, that would definitely disprove the need for intelligent design, an intelligent designer for the DNA code in particular. Because you could say, yeah, well, they can form on their own, like these codes naturally form, like kind of like the information theory that T-Jump was talking about. Like if he could actually prove that that could happen, that would be a huge plus for original life research without the need for intelligent design.
Yeah, I largely agree, and I wouldn't dispute anything that you really said. Like, this isn't something that has been demonstrated, but like, if it was my position that intelligent design is how life was created, how it continues to function, something along those lines, I would want positive evidence for that and not negative evidence against something else, right?
Okay.
But
yeah. So yeah.
So I'm just like, I always like the idea of what would disprove my own hypothesis. I'm kind of curious, or what would prove my hypothesis is even better, but to provide evidence for it. And I'm not sure that, like, because a lot of times people will define the way that is effectively unfalsifiable. And I'm curious if you do have a method for seeing if intelligent design can gather evidence itself, like on its own merits.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a lot of there's definitely some things that are definitely like a positive case for an intelligent designer. Like I just mentioned with the complex specific information in the DNA code, like we only see that with intelligent designers. And like on Earth here, like we only see this type of information with intelligent designers, like the type of information we see in the DNA code that is very complex, yet specific in that it encodes for something. Like, so computer code, it is a very complex code, right? It's very elaborate, detailed, long, expansive. But each of the pieces and the numbers in the computer code mean something. So this type of information, this complex specific information, like we only see that with intelligent designers. So I think that's definitely a positive case for intelligent design. And then the other thing would be, the amount of intervention and regulation that is even needed in these original life experiments. I think that that's an indication for some sort of intervention at the original life, because even if you look at their experiments, they're having to do like a lot of planning and regulation in their own experiments. Like for example, like isolating the products to move on to the next step so you don't have a bunch of junk. Like so in the Miller-Urey experiment, they have like a bunch of tar. Okay, they form these amino acids, but then for subsequent experiments, like with peptide formation, they'll use a pure form of amino acids, or they can, isolate what was done in the last experiment, move on to the next experiment. Like they're just intervening to move and continue on the synthesis of whatever biopolymer they're trying to make. So I think that the heavy intervention, like pH regulation and many other things, like actually shows a need for some sort of intervention in the original life.
Are you familiar with the Lenski long-term evolutionary experiment?
Yep.
There's a particular bacteria.
How long has
Is
it
it a
been going? Like
bacteria? I think
30
it's
years?
bacteria. Yeah,
Yeah,
quite a
Has it
long
been going
time.
like 30 years?
Up to
I think it was E. coli.
yeah,
I think.
something like that.
It's bacteria.
Yeah. I don't think it was E. coli. I think it was whatever it was. They had a bacteria, and one particular bacteria, like subset of the bacteria, was able to process citrate, where in an aerobic environment. And in order to do this, the whatever, we'll just call it bacteria for the sake of discussion. Bacteria needed to have a gene duplication, and it had to have a mutation on one of the existing genes in order to process the citrate in the aerobic environment. Each of these steps were detrimental to its survival prior to, it's called a CYP plus gene, before that CYP plus gene actually became active and was able to start processing citrate. And throughout that experiment, there's very minimal, I mean, you can call it human intervention, adding, continuously adding new materials into the system so that, entropy didn't take over and everything died there. But would you say that that's intelligent design, it changing its own genome through what seems like happenstance?
So I do believe in natural selection. I think that we have that ability, like to not natural selection. Sorry, I mean adaptation. Like I think we have the ability to adapt to our environment. Um, so gene regulation and many other things can like help us survive, and that's like using the information that we already have and regulating it. So I think that the fact that we even have adaptation is amazing. And the fact that we have these gene regulation pathways are like amazing in and of themselves. But yeah, no. So I don't think that like things adapting to their environment necessarily like it disproves like intelligent design. But this particular experiment wouldn't necessarily be relevant to the original life because you're already using like living organisms, which were E. coli bacteria. I just double checked. So Delinsky was using E. coli. And they're basically saying, okay, well, they gain this a function to be able to, utilize citrate as an energy source. Now, some argue they already had that function. It was just like, activated after the exposure to citrate was like the main form of energy that was given. So, like, they utilize that ability to now, would it be like metabolize citrate or whatever to create energy? So, I don't know. I don't think that they like formed an all new gene in response to this. I think that they utilized the information they already had to be able to synthesize use citrate as an energy source.
So changes in, this might be a more concise way of asking it, changes in existing populations across time, is that intelligent design as well?
No, I believe in being able to adapt to your environment. Like
Yeah,
definitely.
so these adaptations that you're talking about, they're not intelligent design. They're maybe like built into the initial conditions of the creature. It's just the creature responding to its environment, essentially, that's causing these changes. It's not prompting by an intelligence, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that the issue with evolution is like the creation of new information instead of like utilizing what's already there. So in terms of like experiments that have been done, like epigenetics and gene regulation has shown that things can adapt to their environment, but were they creating and synthesizing an all new gene from something that wasn't already, there would be the question.
Well, in this particular example that I'm talking about, there was a gene duplication. There's a whole new gene that wasn't a pre-existing gene, granted, but there's another one that it needed to have, and then that one needed to mutate in a particular way in order to process the citrate. That's definitely not something that the initial E. coli population was able to do. That's just a fact.
Okay. So I've heard that the E. coli did already have like the ability at a very faint amount, like they could process citrate. Of course, that's not as normal. That's not what it normally uses for energy. But basically through through them only being exposed to citrate, they definitely were able to utilize whatever was already there.
I mean, I think you might be conflating, like, they can process citrate, but it has to be in an anaerobic, no oxygen environment, where this is an
Mm-hmm.
aerobic environment. So they weren't able to process it prior to this gene duplication and mutation. And that, to me, seems like definitionally new information. You might call it adaptation, but for the sake of the discussion, we're using two different words to say the same thing.
Yeah. So they had the citrate succinate antiporter. You're right that it was only normally expressed under anaerobic conditions, but in this
Yep.
case, they could express it in an aerobic condition. But
Yep.
I think that the citrate succinate antiporter, like that information was like kind of already there.
Kind of, yeah.
So
But
I don't
it
know.
needed different information to actually activate in that environment.
Mm-hmm. So they kind of like rearranged the citrate, this gene that coded for the citrate succinate antiporter to be activated in like aerobic environments.
Well, I think
So
what's interesting about this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. You can go ahead.
Well, what I think is interesting about this particular example is it would not have happened if there wasn't a new piece of DNA. Well, an existing piece of DNA was duplicated, and then that duplicated DNA then mutated and changed. Like, you can say that's an adaptation, that's fine. Like, I don't really care about the semantics of the thing, but that's what I call new information.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like rearranging this gene is something that's very like interesting and cool. But I think that if they already had this ability in anaerobic conditions to make it active in aerobic conditions, I mean, I don't know. Like, what would be impressive to me is like the creation of an all new gene to process citrate that wasn't already there.
That's exactly what our chromosomes. I'm
You're
not
roboting.
on
I can't really.
biology, so correct me if that's a voice. Like, oh shit. Yeah,
Oh,
we're
it
saying.
got a little better. It got a little better at the end.
Okay.
It's a little better now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But, like, if you have an existing population that only has three genes, or not three genes, but three chromosomes, then you get a duplication of one of those chromosomes, and then that one additional chromosome starts doing new things, or allows that organism to start doing new things. I would feel like that's like definitionally new information. And I feel like that's pretty much what's happening here.
Okay. I mean, I would disagree. I think it's just like the rearrangement of where the citrate gene would be kind of what was like key here. But if you want to say that's new information, then all power to you.
Yay, I have all the power.
I mean, you can say whatever you want.
No, I'm joking with you. I'm not trying to. Of course.
So they put the citrate gene behind the RNA promoter, which is always on, instead of like only being activated in anaerobic conditions.
Sure. It's been a long time since I've read it. I don't really recall.
And I acknowledge that it is harder to prove evolution stuff like in a lab because in their theory it happened over such a long period of time. Like I can definitely see where that is the case, and I kind of give you some some leeway on that. But in my opinion, it would just be something that we need to show. And like I think what would be better is like in terms of gaining new information would be to try out putting nucleotides and letting them form and letting them bond on their own and see if they can form some meaningful code without the introduction of primers.
What would new information in an existing living organism look like to you?
Like a completely novel gene that we haven't like seen before. Some new function.
New function of the gene?
Some new function like of the organism, like a new gene, like for a new protein that hasn't been seen before, that has a novel function that's like useful for life.
Okay.
So like I mean,
dude, you
like
think this
X-Men.
shit springs out of nowhere? This is like, you think this shit springs out of nowhere? This is information. You need intelligence for that. This shit doesn't just pop up out the blue. You got a code. DNA, you got a code going.
Well, what I was trying to like kind of point at was like, or I guess ask, was do you guys think that, I think it's new information, this CYP plus gene that I'm talking about. Do you think that this CYP plus gene comes up through the natural mechanism of this organism reproducing, or is an intelligent designer already pre-built this disposition into this organism so that it'll react in this way.
So
Or
it's just
third
like
option.
they rearranged the sit plus gene though.
Yeah, agreed. To me, rearranging is new information.
You know, that's fine. I don't necessarily agree with that, but you know, that's an argument.
Sure, but like, is the intelligent
It's
designer
only information.
nudging these things along the way?
Not necessarily.
It's only information if you can decipher the code. Just rearranging shit doesn't do anything. The other party has to be able to decipher the code.
Yeah, and that's another thing, like being
Sure.
able to use that information, because even if you do have the DNA code synthesis, like being able to transcribe, translate it, and it'd be useful to life is another topic. Because DNA in and of itself really doesn't do anything. It's just a molecule. You got to have the machinery to do something with it. To transcribe it. That's another thing, is like the top-down design of the cell. You know, different machines and stuff like that are intelligently designed would you know, show indications of a top-down design, like a computer needing multiple functional parts to work. Like you need the CPU and the motherboard for a computer. You know, both of those need to be present for the computer to work. In the same way, you need to have the you know, transcription and translation system present for the DNA code to mean anything. Like a computer code on a piece of paper doesn't do anything. Like just the code in and of itself, wherever it may be written, doesn't do anything without the machinery to translate it.
Well, when I sorry, go ahead.
I just had to react. It's way too funny. Jeremy said it doesn't pop out of the blue. Yet it does. The blue source is coming fully alive again. The awakening is the blue source coming back into our lives, being the mother, the black mother, black matter, black matter, black mother. And it is the blue beam that is coming back.
Aliens?
Nah, aliens is someone coming from a different culture into another culture. It's a double meaning. We are more connected with the stars again. It's a metaphysical that will be open to us. But it was too funny because you said motherboard. It is called, that blue source is called the mother of all mothers, who's coming back in our life. And please don't believe me, because it will be opening inside of you.
So in terms of you know, did everything come from a man or a woman, like Adam and Eve types thing? It's funny because the information in men have the X and the Y chromosome, and two X's make female, but the female can't make the Y chromosome. The Y chromosome is very unique, and yeah. So men have the information for both men and women, whereas women do not.
Well, I'd like to address what you said previously about top-down design. And I gotta say, like, when humans are doing top-down design, like, as far as I can tell, that's the only thing that's being top-down design. But that's definitely a good way of establishing what top-down design might look like. Is that you can look at models of cars, and sometimes they're completely revamped and changed, and they will go from engines sitting in the back to engines being in the front. They can drastically change between designs, where, like, a really great example, I think, of evolution would be there's a Australian marsupial blind mole rat, or I'm not sure it's a mole rat, it's mole, blind mole, whatever. And for whatever reason, its DNA is much closer to any of the marsupials that are with it on Australia than the mole rats that are found all across the rest of the world. And that doesn't make a ton of sense if you're doing top-down design. You're like designing these things individually, but they have all these intershared parts that don't really seem necessary for the functionality of those individual things, of those different things.
Now, I'm not familiar with the mole rat, but in terms of experiments for evolution or like demonstrating it, I'm a big fan of you know, like experiment, like, you know, controlled experiments or whatever, like not like a post predictive analysis. And I know a lot of people like demonstrating evolution through like looking at these transitional fossils or saying that this DNA code is different than this one. But in terms of like something that would be convincing to me to prove evolution, it would be like something in an experimental setting. But I know there's a lot of post-dictive things, and they're like, why is it this way, not this way? And I'm not sure. I'm not like an ecologist or like honestly, I'm not even like an evolutionary biologist, and I don't claim to be. But I would need something that's like predictive or some sort of like experiment to show like this new information could come about, which is basically what they're saying with evolution. So the post-dictive analyses of different DNA codes in different organisms is not that convincing to me, nor is like the transitional fossils. So I wouldn't like take that as evidence, even if there was like some good argument with it, because it's all like post-dictive. Like you would need to show this mole rat forming from these other ones. Like that would be something that would be evidence to me.
Well, I mean, evolution has a ton of predictive capabilities. It has made a ton of predictions. Like, I understand you don't like the fossils, but we have been able to predict where Archaeopteryx and Tiktaalik would be found and in what strata it would be found in. And those are proven to be correct. Like, I think predictive capabilities is pretty much the only way of demonstrating that your model is correct. But I think a more serious issue might be that, like, the terminology, like what I'm saying is new information, you're saying is adaptation. And what I take from biologists, and I could be wrong because I'm not a biologist, when they're talking about new information, it's what I'm describing and not what you're describing, where a new chunk of gene shows up on an existing one that wasn't there before and has no antecedent to it. That would, if anything, that would seem to indicate to me like an intelligent design, like something just randomly going in and adding stuff to it to get these things to live.
Different biologists will constitute different evidence. Like it's just based on opinion at some point. Like what they constitute as new information. I would say some novel gene that has never been seen before, like or some new gene that doesn't use pre-existing information. Like that, for me, that's what it would be. Now other biologists may have different opinions of what is new information. So I can't like speak on what they would consider evidence. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not like I said, I'm not big into fossils because as a Christian, I also think that there was different species back in the day. And I think that, this is why the flood had to happen. So showing me that there's some species that there isn't now isn't really evidence for me because I would agree with that. I would say, yeah, I think we did have different organisms.
Like,
Maybe.
well, why isn't there really? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I wasn't really going to say nothing new. So.
Because if I was in your position, I would really want like a robust explanation for like the biblical flood hypothesis. Because kind of what I would, this is just my opinion. Obviously, I don't hold the position, so it wouldn't be for me to define. But what I would expect is like an initial spot where Garden of Eden was, all plant and animal life seeming to emanate from that singular spot, then it all going away, and then doing the same thing again in a different layer of the strata where everything starts here and starts moving away. Where like I don't understand how penguins exist on the biblical flood model. I'm going to be perfectly frank.
Yeah, I can see that. So the flood would have definitely, threw a damper into that in terms of we need to find out fossils here and then show them expanding out. I think that the worldwide flood would definitely, because there was I think a lot of things were covered, and I think that in the bottom layers you would see things and organisms that aren't there now. Because if there was a flood that wiped out everything and wiped out all the corrupted lineages, like there would be like these other weird animal forms underneath, like the mud. And Aiden poses the argument that the organisms that would be more evolved, that would be able to move to higher ground, would be found at the higher layers of the digs, like basically going down into the surface of the earth, like because they'd be seeking high ground, whereas organisms that could not seek high ground, like smaller organisms, like would be in lower layers. So he says, like, basically the layers of the fossils would, they could say, yeah, well, you could see as we move up more evolved species, but you could have that same explanation with like, animals seeking high ground after the flood. So that's why I'm not, big on like looking at the fossil record, because I think that we'd see pretty much the same thing as evolutionary biologists say. So that makes sense, but that's why I like, experimental research proving evidence.
Well, like I really wouldn't expect the same thing because like especially plant life, and maybe I would think same thing with aquatic life. Almost all of it would have had to have died because the salinity of the water, unless like I guess magic salt could be coming in and all the saltwater animals would get to live. But then all of a sudden you have new saltwater animals going into the new freshwater, where there's no environment there at all. You'd have all the plants. There would be no plants at all, except for like where Noah's landing. Everything coming out from there. I would expect very different evidence for that hypothesis.
Well, plants wouldn't need to be on the ark because seeds can survive in, in high water environments and then just basically be reactivated whenever they're in a better condition to grow.
Sure, but like there wasn't like some Noah Johnny Appleseed running around the earth throwing all the relevant tree seeds, because we have a huge diversity of trees. Do you think all that diversity of trees propagated throughout the entire world? And I don't know if you're a young Earth creationist, but what 4,000 years?
I planted trees everywhere. Yeah, I think God would have put, plant life all over the earth.
Oh, come on, that's just cheating. You think God did it?
Well, I think in Genesis he stated that, he made the earth fruitful, not just like the Garden of Eden.
So you think like God made the trees come back after the flood?
Well, I think that the information would have already been there. And
well, you need to understand. All you got to do is look at what happens at a flood to any vegetation. Their seeds will just float. A lot of them, flowers, grass, trees, their seeds float. As it settles, then you get a very mixed vegetation.
Yeah, but that would spread it all over the world, and then
no, not necessarily.
But we're talking about a flood that lasted almost a year, right? So all the existing trees would be dead.
But they'd be covered, right? They'd be covered in mud, or if there was like a mud flood, and those could propagate whenever they get in better conditions.
Sure.
What is your contention? I don't get it. You're saying that there shouldn't be trees everywhere?
That the species of tree, unless somebody's like going around and like parsing out where the seeds need to go back to, that you would see one type, or like the however many types that are on the ark, spread out from wherever the ark was and slowly start to recover the earth.
Well, the ark didn't have trees. Noah didn't take trees. The trees,
Did it
the
take
information seeds. No, it doesn't mention that in the Bible. He just had animals, and so the seeds could have been just covered in mud or soot or whatever during the flood that regrew afterwards.
But like most seeds won't survive a whole year in salt water, right?
Well, you're assuming it's salt, and yeah, seeds can survive in high water.
Yeah,
but not most.
No, yeah, they can. So can insects too.
Oh.
Which is why another thing, like if you were to go to insects are the same way. They'll burrow into the ground, and they'll survive a flood.
Or they could be landing on stuff on the top of the water. Insects live over water.
Yeah, but you guys actually think that like most plant types have seeds that can survive in salt water for a year?
Well, you're assuming
I know it's
salt.
like less than a year.
Yes,
why wouldn't it be salt water?
Well, I mean, I don't know what kind of water it was that he flooded the earth with, but I assume it could be brackish, maybe. I don't know. It wouldn't.
Yeah, let's just say brackish. Sure.
I know it. Whatever. I don't know. So then, yeah, I don't see an issue. Yeah, seeds can survive in water, just like a normal flood. Like if some area gets flooded or some island, gets flooded, that gets re-exposed, you'll see the plants start to regrow.
Yeah, but that's not when the flood lasts a year, though. I really think that, obviously you guys disagree with me, so I don't really want to press the point, but I really feel like flood water for a year would have a different impact than a local flood for a week or two.
All right, well, let's say you had to analyze the flood. So, I mean, if you look at what it states, that the doors broke open and the windows broke open, you assume salt water, but it doesn't have to be salt water. We don't even have to have large saltwater oceans at this time. Might not even exist. The world was completely different. Freshwater, if there are saltwater pools that exist at this time, if the freshwater is what burst forward, the freshwater would have sat on top of the saltwater. They would not necessarily have mixed. We don't know what the earth looked like. We don't know what caused the salt waters versus the fresh waters. None of this is explained biblically.
Yeah, but the fossils show the way they are preserved show that it must have been boiling salt water to preserve them in this way. You can look at Rogersberg's work of mud fossils at university. He even put it up to Yale, and there's one professor now at the moment willing to talk to him after a year.
Well, the reason I keep bringing up the salt water is I would think that the oceans are salt, and then you'd want to say that the majority of fish survived. I just feel like that's more parsimonious, that like whales didn't get extinct because they're swimming around in salt water, then all this fresh water comes in and kills them. Because I'm pretty sure the book does say the waters burst forth from the deep, and that would make the fresh water mingle with the salt water, right?
Yeah, and I've seen plenty of freshwater fish in saltwater, and I've seen plenty of saltwater fish in freshwater. If somebody lived at the coast and lived near the rivers as they change from brackish to fresh, I mean, you see it.
Have y'all
I tell you,
also seen like?
Go ahead.
Have y'all also seen like where the oceans like don't mix? There's like different types of salinity content, and like
Yep.
there's like a line between the Pacific Ocean and like the Atlantic Ocean, and the water does not mix. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was just pointing that out. It's actually pretty weird. Like the waters, like they can put them in a bottle and shake them up, and literally the waters will not mix because of salt content.
Yeah,
Yeah,
eventually
because it
they
has a
will mix
different
though.
charge.
How did they get them to mix?
Well, eventually the salt does dissolve into the other types of water. Like like if there's enough titration between the two levels.
I've heard that they've tried to mix them and they couldn't, but maybe I haven't looked into it enough. Either way, you can see those hard lines in the water where those waters will not mix.
Yeah, sometimes for sure. I agree.
You'll see it. It's in the rivers too. If you live near the ocean, maybe not all rivers, but Bull River in Savannah has that as it goes from brackish further in up to the Lazaretto Creek. It stays brackish, but you could tell the difference in it from when it goes from salt to fresh. You can look at it and tell. You'll see it in the color as you change, and it is a clear line.
Yeah, you even see it in the fish species swimming in it, because you have certain fish that can go into the brackwater, but it can go, and they can go into salt, but they can go. The ones that are in the brack, that's a special species.
I got one like that by my house. I fish salmon right by the divider line, the brackwater, and then you got other types of fish behind the line. It's kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah, we got some fish that can travel in that brack area. Not all, but some can.
Well, sharks are supposed to be saltwater, and I've seen sharks in straight freshwater environment, way further upriver than they're supposed to be.
Yeah, we got sweetwater sharks as well. So
Yeah, we been out fishing for trout and end up with bull sharks, in the boat, on coming in on the line. It's just like crazy. Way
no, we
further
don't
up.
have sharks in the Netherlands here.
Seen gators in freshwater. Supposedly gators like brackish water, but if you're in the South, you know that any body of water can have a gator in it. Doesn't have to be brackish, doesn't have to be salt, doesn't have to be fresh. Might just be your swimming pool one day,
I have no idea. We don't have gators here, so
Florida's interesting. Yeah, you might just end up with a pet gator one day if you have a pool or a pond or a little dog. You had a little dog. He took a nap after he made it a meal. Now you've got a pet gator.
no, thank you.
What's up, Daslo?
Yo.
Gloomy day over here, but gotta say it was a pretty easy day.
Where's here?
Right now, I'm in North Hollywood, just left LA, sitting in front of a 7-Eleven, eating a piece of pizza. And that's it.
Oh,
Dude, what'd I tell you about living off gas station food, bro?
Bro, I'm not packing a lunch, dude. You want me to wake up early so I can pack a lunch, dude? I'll take that 5 extra sleep, bro. That 5 extra minutes, dude, over the lunch any day.
you're as bad as no. So what you do, since you're that bad, is
Talk to him.
you get a crock pot. All right, just get a crock pot.
Oh, I beat the crock pot. I whip that shit, bro, for sure.
Okay, well just whether
Just be glad
crock,
he's eating pizza, guys. That's the best junk food you can eat.
I mean just a
Straight to pot, yeah.
Oh, go ahead, bro.
I was just confirming that, it's definitely a good meal. It's generally low budget. You don't have to freaking.
Without a container?
So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question you asked first, right? You guys revised this question because I proved you wrong yesterday, and
No,
it's a
This has
revision
always
of
been
the
the question.
No,
Yeah, this has always been this has been the question since 2015, bro.
no, the question you asked yesterday was different, but now
Correct. Yes. Yes, it was different. But the original question that you might have missed, being that you're new to the whole conversation, has always been gas pressure, right, without containment. But we were just chopping it up about the gradient. That was something separate.
So can you show gas pressure and what's the exact number? So say it again. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this new question now.
Yeah, basically, I'm making a positive claim that gas pressure requires containment. So we live here, right, at 14.7 psi at sea level, being 1 atmosphere.
That means per square inch. Yeah.
Can you provide an example of gas pressure in an open system or without containment? So basically, what I'm telling you is that you're presuming, right, that we live in an open system. We've got an atmosphere next to a vacuum, next to a 10 to the negative 17 torr, and we've got positive pressure next to that. Right.
Yes.
So that's your thought on it, and gravity is responsible for creating that. So we're trying to find an example where you could show us gas pressure at 14.7 psi in an open system, or just without containment.
And you won't take altitude, right? Then and out gradually.
That's the thing in contention, bro. Like that's the thing that we're debating about. We're debating about whether or not we're contained or in an open system.
So my belief system is that we are in this container called the atmosphere that's held there with gravity, but you don't believe in gravity and you don't believe that there's an atmosphere. So like we're living in two different worlds trying to get one answer. But
can you replicate this atmosphere that you're referring to then with the pressure?
I think it'll be impossible just because how big the Earth is. Like I couldn't do it now.
No, nobody's asking you to recreate the Earth, bro. Like
no, just
if I gave you an example yesterday, I don't know if you caught it, but like I've got a flat tire, right? And I need you to put some air in it for me. Can you do that without bringing a container of air? Can you show me gas pressure without containment?
So and then the examples that I have are excluded from me. I can't use these examples that I could give you. Like
your one example. Yes, you can't use that one example. You must have some other examples. Come on.
No, this is like, why do I have to do this? You're trying to prove to me that what I said, my one example, is not true, but I need you to prove that we don't live in a container.
Well, that's a reversal of burden of proof fallacy. So in order to place that upon me, right, you'd be committing a fallacy. So you're the one with
I have an answer, but I can't use that answer. That's what you're telling me. So it's not a fallacy.
But in the last 10 years, haven't you been able to
Eden,
use
I
your
don't know.
imagination
You hear me
to come up
talking,
with another answer?
I'll back you out if you want, bro, but I was kind of chopping it up with this guy. That's cool. I don't know.
No, you take over. You take over. You're doing great. Thank you, guys. My bad.
All right, so yeah. I don't know if you're not following the logic here, Notorious, but you're making a presupposition. You're making a presupposition.
Let me.
I don't know. Somebody's hot micing or something. Somebody hot micing? Maybe somebody else wants to get in. Go for it, guys.
No, dude, I was hot micing. Go ahead, Dicelo. My bad.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm just trying to recollect my thoughts, man.
So yeah, it was about, you guys were talking about a gradient, and then we're trying to get him to provide evidence of this pressure without some sort of containment, and he's trying to point to the atmosphere. And I was just trying to ask him, maybe he's considered any other scientific evidence within the last decade.
So you see, it sounds like you're asking a different question. So you're saying a gradient of air pressure without a container, basically, right?
Yeah, no, we're not talking about gradients. We did that yesterday.
See, like that's why I'm getting confused. Like,
yeah, I know. Everybody's trying to jump in, so I don't know. Jeremy, are you here, bro?
Well, I'm gonna step out. I'll listen to you, Dicelo. You got a great way of explaining things. Sorry.
So while you're listening and not using your mic, I used an example of a fan blowing. One side will have low pressure, and the other side will have high pressure. That would be the definition of a gradient without a container, a pressure gradient without a container.
Yeah. Sure, but you can't, just to reiterate Dyslow's point, you can't even have, forget about the gradient. You can't have the gas pressure at all without a container. Here's the phrasing, here's the logical phrasing for it. Gas pressure without a container doesn't exist. So you need to show us gas pressure without a container. The burden of proof's on you. He was right. It's not our burden. We're saying this thing doesn't exist. You're saying, yeah, it does. You're trying to use the thing that's in contention, but you can't just say, oh yeah, go up a mountain or something, because that's the thing that's in contention.
So what is a container? Let's make sure. I want to know, what's your definition of a container? What can I
Physical.
use as a container?
We're looking for a physical container, not your presupposed gravitational field, right? Because you can't flip the switch on and off. You can't verify it. You can't falsify it. All you can do is make positive claims on the assumption. So in order for us to assume that it's possible, like, you would have to show an example other than the thing of contention being the atmosphere. So do you have an example of gas pressure without physical containment other than the atmosphere? Do you have that?
A plasma confinement in a reactor.
A what?
A plasma confinement in a fusion reactor.
And is the fusion reactor a closed system or open system?
No, it's held by magnetic fields. No physical container.
Gas or plasma?
Yeah.
Hold on, Islo, this is the gas or plasma?
It's gas.
Oh, I thought you said plasma. Okay, let's see it.
You
sure it's gas and not plasma?
It's pressure inside an ITER reactor. Hot ionized gases.
That's not gas. That's called plasma.
Hot ionized gases. You could call it plasma, but it's gases.
Ionized gas is called plasma. Not you could call it plasma. That is what it's called.
You could call it plasma, but they're confined to magnetic fields, not physical containers.
We all call it plasma. Everyone calls it. And when you say you could call it plasma, yes, we could and we do. It's called plasma.
I mean, can you show me plasma outside of a magnetic field? Because, I mean, as far as I'm aware, there's a magnetic field here on the Earth. Like, I don't understand why you're making the distinction about it being held together with magnetic fields. It's just, I don't know. Seems redundant.
No, that's the example that you asked for, and I gave it to you.
You gave me plasma. I asked for gas.
Plasma is ionized gas.
I'm sorry. In case you're not aware, we've got a few different states of phase of matter. We've got liquid, solid, gas, and then we've got another one called plasma. So you're invoking a completely separate phase state. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll give you another one since you want to accept that.
It's not a matter of what I want to accept. It's a matter of what's rational and logical. Like, I ask you for gas, you bring me a bouncy ball or some plasma. Like, that's not adding up.
Okay, when a rocket fires in space.
Bro. How am I supposed to validate? How am I supposed to validate or substantiate rockets in space? How are you?
Like, you don't believe in space.
It's not a matter of believing, bro. It's a matter of evidence. What can you bring to the table to substantiate? You're gonna go on about unicorns. You're gonna go on about rockets in space. What's next, bro? ET? Like, come on now.
You could go to the Smithsonian and you could look at the capsule that they supposedly landed on the moon with. Tinfoil. Aluminum. Kind of a joke.
Let's get serious here, bro. Like,
I'm
I thought we
rolling
were
over
gonna have
the
a serious
floor.
conversation. I don't know. You're talking about rockets. You're talking about atmosphere, the thing in contention. Like, I don't know, bro. It's seeming a little sus on your part.
No, y'all just made more like rules to the question after I proved you guys wrong. Y'all conceded defeat yesterday and now came back huddled up with a new way to not accept the answer. It's just
You haven't proved
The only
anything.
hold on a second.
very
Ionizing,
convenient.
ionizing gases is
Hold on a
the
second,
thing.
Clarissa. Fuck. The only thing I conceded was your definement of a gradient having only 2 points necessary. But after you left that conversation, we actually deep dived into that. And in all essence, it seems like it would require 3, if not more. I don't know if you want to rehash that conversation so you can see what we're talking about. But again, man, like, if the only thing you're here for is like a gold star, bro, like, just take it and bounce, dude. Like, we're not here for dishonest, bad faith conversations.
All right, so here's another one. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Smoke rising from a fire.
Okay.
The hot gas, smoke. Are we sure smoke is a hot gas?
Are you saying smoke is a hot gas?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we understand that together.
I wouldn't say all smoke is hot. No, I mean, you've got some smoke that could probably probably lose its temperature and equalize to the atmosphere around it, yet still be smoke. So
All right,
I don't understand.
let's look up the definition of smoke before I continue.
Well, I'm driving,
Seems
so
like
yeah,
smoke,
go
like
for it.
from a cigarette or like wood. Like if that gets hot enough, it's almost a lighter form of ash. Really,
Okay,
I
so
don't think smoke would be the form of gas.
smoke.
But go ahead.
Is smoke exclusive to fire?
No, it's a suspension of carbon.
Is
But it's
smoke
carbon.
gas?
Hold on.
Is smoke gas?
It is a gas, yes.
Smoke is gas.
Yes.
You just said it was a suspension of carbon.
No, I was giving you the definition of smoke.
Yeah, you said it was a gas, but the definition you read said it's carbon.
So smoke. Listen, bro. Like, I just want to come to a conclusion. It's like I just want to just nitpick little stuff, but smoke is gases and water vapors. Okay, it's a gas. So smoke rising from a fire. There's no container. The rising smokes create a pressure gradient with low pressure above and higher pressure at the source. I know you guys are thumbing away, trying to find a way out of this, but I'll take this other gold star.
It sounds like ash to me.
I'll take another
Like
gold
carbon,
star
yeah.
for the day.
Laugh.
When it's nitrogen and lighter than oxygen. Explain that.
All right, here goes another one. Here goes another one. To try to see if I can get 3 gold stars today. Propane or butane burning from a burner. When you turn on the gas on a camp stove, right? Let's just use a camp stove. The pressurized gas is released and it ignites into the open air. The gas pressure still exists in the flow, even outside the container.
That's no different from a balloon that has helium that you just open the balloon. It's no different.
But it's not in the container when it's on the camp burner. It's outside the container. This is another gold star that I've received today.
It's going through a transformation is what it is, bro. It comes
So
from
I'll
a
go for
container,
3.
and it ends
I'll
up
go for 3.
and it ends up in a container.
That's right.
I mean,
Transfers from one container to another.
No, there's no container. There's no container. It goes into the air.
I mean, I'm willing to give you a gold star for it just because you're trying to think, man, and like I can appreciate that. But
All right,
I would like to.
Can I put the sticker on my shirt, please?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank
yes,
you.
sir. I would like.
On your shirt.
I would like to see like 14.7 psi though. Like if that's possible, you think you could get that going?
Coming out of the burner into the air with no container?
Yeah. Well, I
I'm
mean,
pretty
we
sure
live
you
in I mean, the atmosphere outside is already 14.7, so I don't doubt that's going to be possible, right? But I don't know. I'd
give
have
me
a
the
problem.
gold star. Let's just give me a gold star.
Hey, since you want to point out anomalies within a container, did you know that you can also get a vacuum bubble within a container?
You talking to me or them?
Talking to you.
Listen, I just got a gold star. Relax with the questions, brother. Like I got 2 days in a row. So are we done with this now? So do you guys think the Earth is a globe?
No way.
Not yet. How many gold stars do I need to receive here before I convert you guys over?
You need to come in here looking like Mr. T, bro. I need to see like dozens of chains, not just 2 chains, but you know.
What did you just concede to?
Oh, nah, I'm just fucking with the dude. But yeah, I mean, he's thinking. He showed me an example of a pressure gradient yesterday using a fan, which was pretty nifty. And then he gave you gas pressure with an open container just using fire. So I mean, he's thinking. You got to give him that. You all right, bro?
Oh, I mean, you're going to have, even just in your Atmos, you're going to have.
Dude, it sounds like
low
he's reading
pressures.
off flatearth.ws, bro.
That's fine. Okay, here
So,
go another
I
one. Here
mean-
go another one. Here go another one. All right, let's do one that's more probably on your level of thinking. The one that blurted out the flat Earth WS, whatever he said. When you open a can, CO2 rapidly runs out of the can, and you can see and feel the bubbling and fizzing of your. I don't know. You sound like Coors Light drinkers, maybe Bud Lights. I'm not sure, but yeah, gas.
you know what you're describing is what would happen if we had an open atmosphere on Earth. That's what would happen. It would suck all the pressure right up, just like that.
That's what I'm saying, bro. Like whatever I say is not going to be enough.
Not really.
These are
I mean, it sounds
this
good.
is an example. This is great examples I'm giving you of a pressure gradient coming out of a container, a physical container, into a no container
And if we
area.
removed our container, all of our atmosphere would go.
We wouldn't be
You were
here
telling the
to be
truth.
opening beers.
No, it's cool. I'm not against you. I'm just saying you're telling a truth, but it's your projection onto that truth that makes you think it's a globe and pressure gradient, right? That
I knew y'all were going to
is
do this. You're going to
stable
come back
without
to
a
saying
container.
that. So you're going to come back to there's no atmosphere and that doesn't exist. And I get it.
No. I'm saying there's an atmosphere in both models, but you're saying yours don't need a container. Is what it is.
No, these are simple, just gases that's coming out of cans, butane flames, lighters, whatever you want to
But
call them. The little.
scale it up. Right, I got you. But scale it up.
Is there any other
Thank you.
questions I can answer for you guys today? I have 2 stars for today. I would like 3, but 2 is okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean,
Proud
we
of you.
gotta, we
Take a
gotta.
look at flatearthintel.com. You might be surprised.
Yeah. So, anyways, having high-low pressure systems due to temperature fluctuations doesn't necessarily say, oh, I've done it without a container. You could demonstrate that within the container on a smaller scale. So if the hole is still a container, I can even show you negative pressure systems in a container. You can reorient
I think your original question was without a container. That's why I use these examples.
But if you're doing it in the overall system of
Yes.
Earth, in the atmos, and the contention is that there's a container, and you say, I've done it in the atmos, and you say there is no container, then we're just at a bypass. I don't really think you have a concession.
No, you guys have the concession. I've
Come on, man. Don't try to steal his thunder, man. He's feeling good right now.
I got the gold stars. Don't try to take it away. I got them. Just relax. Let's move on to the next topic. Is there anything else you flat earthers have questions about? Maybe I can answer them. I'm a man with answers.
Do you believe in
you
God?
definitely have the answer for gas pressure without a container. You let some smoke off in the air and it dissipated all over the place. That's doing what we say it does.
So you asked for this example. I gave you this example, and then you said, "Yeah, that's what we said." Like, this is crazy. Like, why would you ask me if you know this exists?
We say the gas is going to disperse and go everywhere. That's what your smoke does and all your stuff does.
So you asked. So you literally asked for this. I didn't. This wasn't like. This is
You
normal
have a
to me in
gas
my
pressure
life.
without a container.
So we
Not have
open a
it
can of.
instantly disperse. You open a can, it instantly disperses into the available space.
And the gradients as well, too.
Instantly evaporates into the available space. That's what gas does. You don't have anything that we're not saying happens.
No, you guys said it didn't happen. A pressure gradient without a container or outside of a container, and I've proven with 2 good examples.
Well, that was
3
yesterday,
actually. No, 2 today, 1 yesterday.
You can't have gas pressure without a container, dude. That's what we were talking about just now.
I
You gave
just
all
explained to
examples
you.
of gas pressure that dissipates instantly, which is what we're saying would happen if there was no container.
No, I'm telling you that the gradient occurs when the gas leaves the container, when it gets out of the container. That's the whole thing. That was the main part of that.
But that was yesterday. Like
No,
today,
today
You don't
I
have any
brought up
argument for gas pressure without a container. You have nothing for that.
when you open a beer can. Let's say you shake up a beer can and you open it. There's gas in the gradient that comes out, not in the container no more, outside of the container.
There's gas in a container. There's gas in a container. Then you open the container. Then it disperses, doing what gases does, which is filling the available volume. Yes, we know what happens when you open a can. This isn't an example of gas pressure without a container.
Okay, so
let me try to talk to you.
Okay, look, let's go to the butane.
Let me try to
RG, now's not the time, dude.
When you light the butane lighter,
RG, hold on.
when you light the butane flame, right? Like a torch, or I don't know if you guys use torches or stuff like that, or burners. When you open it up, the gas comes out, and there's a gradient. You could literally turn the dial up and down, and there's a gradient right there with just the gas.
Can I specify something? Let me reiterate the question. Can you
provide? It's the 3rd time you're reiterating it.
Yeah.
By the way.
All right. Fair enough. Can you provide gas pressure without a container, without containment?
Yeah, I said that yesterday. And you didn't accept it. The fan.
No. That was a gradient. I gave you that.
That's a pressure gradient. That's a pressure gradient as well, too.
Yeah, but I'm asking for gas pressure without a physical container.
So why wouldn't the fan be the explanation of that? That's what I'm confused about.
Because you're still dealing with the atmosphere.
So what's in that? So what is in the atmosphere?
Notorious. The container's pre-existing is what we're trying to say. It's already here. It's already there. Your model doesn't have one. So anything that happens inside this firmament, gradient, dome, whatever you want to call it, it's already there. It's pre-existing. That's what we're trying to explain.
So air, nitrogen, oxygen, argon is not. I don't get it. Like these are all
It's
gases
not a
that you can
container.
find.
It's not a
The
container,
thing,
but
the thing you're missing, Notorious, is that we have a continuous 14.7 psi gas pressure here in the atmosphere. All of your examples are very short-lived experiences. It's not a constant thing. It's not constant gas pressure. You just got, CO2 fizzing out a can. You got fire, creating smoke, but you don't have gas pressure without containment. That's the problem.
Yeah, if we ask you to bring us 14 psi right now, can you do it?
Without a container?
Well, that's the thing. But that's the problem. Taking back Eden is that he's already got 14.7 psi sitting in his hand right now without a container.
Yeah, that's true. I was just wondering if there was another method he could show, or another type of gas at 14 psi without a container.
Vapors from a hot surface. How about that?
How long would that last?
It doesn't matter. Like, are you going to add more rules to this question? Are you just going to make this the longest question ever? Like, it has to last more than this. Like, just take the L and give me the star. Let's move on to the next subject.
Yeah, it's just an interesting belief we still hold on to.
I've
the whole
proven
globe.
it. I've gave you a good example of it. And you just say, how long does that actually last? We need it to last longer than this. Like, you're always just extending this question.
Yeah, because you're not providing, in my opinion, strong evidence. You're really just begging the question.
yeah, we're asking on a big scale, on the grand, where you live, on the grand scale.
He might not even know what begging the question means, though. I mean, you might have to explain that.
I understand. You guys are just recooking this question over and over when I give you an example of what you asked for.
We're trying to get you to realize the ridiculousness of the answers you're given and how it's non-analogous to what we experience here, right? Which is what we're trying to get you to provide evidence for. You believe that you live in a world with positive pressure next to negative pressure, right? And the only thing dividing that is gravity. So you live in a fantasy world.
That's what holds it.
That's what holds it, right? So what you've got is containment without a physical container. That's what you got right there. And we're trying to lead you down.
You believe in that too, though.
Well, we don't. We're trying to lead you down a logical understanding that in order to have positive gas pressure, you have to have some physical containment due to the fact that there's no evidence you can provide anything other than that. You can't show me gas pressure without containment without doing all kinds of smoke tricks and whatnots, bro. Like, you don't live in fucking smoke. You're not living on a fucking hot stove. You know what I'm saying?
These are minor experiments to show you how things work. But can I ask a question? I want to see if I could maybe even give you guys a gold star for today.
All right.
Can you explain the dome that I call the atmosphere and you call the dome? Can you explain it? Or do you just believe in it?
I don't. That was the thing I told you yesterday, bro. We're trying to separate from the beliefs. We're looking for facts, fact-based answers to support truth, not a belief.
Can I get fact-based answers on what this thing you believe in, the dome? Yes or no?
Sure.
So you're gonna get. Well, hold on before you answer, bro. You're gonna get a bunch of mixed answers. Not all of us flat earthers all agree on everything, and that's a big misconception that's put out there that we're all, reading from the same script, and that's just not the case. But go ahead, Eden.
Who is this talking?
It's Dicelo.
Oh yeah,
This is me,
my
Dicelo.
name's
But
John.
go ahead, Eden.
Who was that talking in the first place? Right just now.
My name is John. I was thinking perhaps some people have some thoughts on the dome here that they want to share, but I had a quick question for you since you want to.
So before you start, the guy that was speaking before you, I have a big page full of golden stars. I want to give these out. I bought these golden stars to put these on your chest, so when you go home, you'll get accolades. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, hold on. How important is it whether or not Earth is flat or Earth is the sphere to you on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being very important.
So I asked a question before the other guy spoke.
Okay, yeah, we'll skip it. It's okay. So, in the firmament, how long have you been into flat Earth? Because we have evidence of the firmament. Maybe you haven't seen. We have video evidence from Operation Fishbowl, and then there's CIA documents we can direct you to go through. If you type in CIA FOIA firmament in Google right now, it'll take you to the CIA FOIA page. There's 5 pages, 22 links per page. Refer with their documents that they release to the public because they're over 25 years with reference to the firmament. Then you've also got, we can also direct you to radio bouncing off a quote unquote ceiling I'm not at my workstation. I don't have the tech specs on that, but on hand. But I can pull it up for you. What evidence have you seen so far? Have you seen the video evidence from Operation Fishbowl from 1962?
No, but in your words, what is the dome we live in? You don't have to
Yeah,
push me to another link or anything like that. Just you
sure,
could just explain
sure.
it simply.
Sorry,
No,
I
go.
didn't believe in the flat Earth until I found out maybe we didn't go to the moon. Then I found out the principal evidence where they showed we were in a special position. And then I found out the Bible mentioned a flat earth. So in that pursuit, I found they mentioned a firmament or a dome. And then a few things clicked. I realized, wow, there's no uncut video from Earth to far enough away showing the sphere in space. Despite 4 countries going to the moon, especially the United States last year, earlier this year. And there's no uncut video. And I have a suspicion that it's a dome. And that's why we have rockets either going directly up or parabolic. And then we can get into what the CIA. Go ahead.
Right. No, right. So besides the CIA stuff, you just have suspicion that we live underneath a dome. So you don't really believe in it. You just have suspicion.
No, I've seen what appears
That's your words.
video
That's what you just
evidence.
said.
Well, no, I've seen the video evidence that I accept as circumstantial, but strong enough. Like when you look at evidence, sometimes you haven't seen 100% of the evidence. Sometimes you've only gotten to, let's say, 1% or 10%. But sometimes that 1 or 10% is enough to become an early adopter. You know what I mean? Let's say I'm an investigator. There's a crime. Now, I have lots of evidence to consider, but there's a suspect who has been identified to have committed a crime, and now my very first evidence that I'm going over is video evidence. That's probably enough for me to become an early adopter. You know what I mean? I don't need to go. I mean, I can to corroborate, but that's the whole point here. We have video evidence, and we also have government evidence that seemed to be released. So, any thoughts?
So you brought up the Bible, CIA memos or leaks, I guess,
Video.
and video and the Bible, right? Yeah. So and you still just have a suspicion. So I would like to speak to someone that have a belief or some type of knowledge or real evidence that that we live underneath a dome. You're just suspicious. I understand it. I respect you for your suspicion. I
Oh
used to
no,
be
no,
like,
thank you. Well, no, it's gone from it's okay. I accept it as a belief until proven otherwise. So it's now my knowledge until proven otherwise.
okay. Anybody else?
So, I mean, what kind of answer are you expecting to get?
What is the dome? Like, why do you believe in the dome? Why do you deny that every astronaut said that we left Earth, so we went to the moon, and they seen the Earth from outer space? Why would you ignore all those firsthand testimonies versus a couple of CIA letters in the Bible?
I mean, can you provide evidence of thrust within a vacuum?
Oh, yeah, guys, I'm eating. I'll answer the dome question in a minute, but could I ask you, sir, when I get done eating, I'll talk. But where's the separation in space and your gases?
It's a gradient.
Like where
We
exactly?
already
Like we're
talked
talking
about
about how
that.
many feet?
Yeah. How many miles? Like what gas is on top? How does it function and not get sucked out? Oh, sorry.
Hold on. I gotta go to my notes 1 second.
The script.
602,000 miles.
No, it's